Hey guys, welcome to ACD Combatives. This is Coach Kurt. This is going to be a video about, is MMA the best standard for self-defense training? It's one of those questions that has been on my mind to talk about. As you know, I started out in traditional martial arts, and I've gone to a lot of modern concepts and training, mixed martial arts, Krav Maga, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I train and teach Taiho Jutsu, but I train and teach what's called modern police concepts. So I've gotten a lot of influence from mixed martial arts and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I've always straddled the line. I have 1 foot in the traditional martial arts world and 1 foot in what I consider modern martial arts or combat arts. Listen, I'm going to jump to the chase. I think that yes and no is the answer, and we'll get to that. I think MMA is a phenomenal standard for self-defense training as far as the type of training you do in mixed martial arts schools. But obviously, it's not the whole answer. It doesn't address a lot of issues. But what it does address is a particular method of training that is no nonsense, fighting resisting opponents, sparring in various ranges efficiently, the long range striking into the short range boxing, and then into dirty boxing and clinch range, and then into throws and takedowns, and then the ground game. All this is super important in self-defense. Obviously, how and when you would do these things in self-defense matter a lot. And we all know that self-defense includes concepts like, being aware of your surroundings, having good situational awareness. These are all things that you talk about in self-defense, parking under a lighted area, blocks and security systems, and just not going places where you shouldn't be. These are all, obviously things that you talk about when we're talking about self-defense in general. But when we're talking about mixed martial arts as a training standard, we're talking about efficient, practical striking systems based on Muay Thai and boxing, practical clinch range fighting based, again, on Muay Thai, but wrestling like Greco-Roman or freestyle, or judo if you're in a gi. And Japanese jiu-jitsu definitely still has an influence. But then you go to the ground, and you're definitely talking about Brazilian jiu-jitsu and catch wrestling. These are all very practical, proven systems, no nonsense. You can't argue that they're effective, and that is why I think that is a good standard. Now, there's an issue. There is a culture that goes along with MMA, not entirely true of all gyms. I have been extremely lucky in a lot of the MMA gyms that I've trained at. I've really only trained at 1 or 2 solid MMA gyms that were just straight up MMA. That's how I got my, loosely speaking, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu start, was MMA grappling programs, obviously based on jiu-jitsu and catch. But that's how I got my grappling start. It wasn't at a traditional jiu-jitsu school. So I do have a bias towards MMA schools, but also along with some of those gyms, and I've been to some as guests, when I travel and so forth, there can be a culture issue, not the same level of respect that you might get at a traditional martial arts school. But again, I've been very lucky. There's been cases where people are like, I've had coworkers, cops, that are like, well, I don't want to go to an MMA school because, there's thugs at MMA school. Just because somebody has tattoos and maybe has some criminal history doesn't make them a thug, and it doesn't make them a bad person. The mat or the ring, it's church, and you get along and you train with these people and you trust them on the mat and they trust you on the mat. It's just like building relationships in any other aspect of your world. Some of the best camaraderie I've had outside of the career path, and I make it a point to make friends with people that are not in law enforcement. And I would suggest that you maybe do that regardless of what occupation you're in. But when it comes to police, fire, medicine, like firefighters and emergency room doctors and nurses and stuff. There's a certain level of stress with that type of employment that only other people who are in the same field know and understand and can relate to you. But again, I suggest that you find people that are friends outside of your occupation, especially if you're in stressful work, like public safety in general. But back on task, we're talking about the difference between an MMA school, and there's a lot of traditionalists that really poo-poo MMA because they don't use the proper terminology and the traditional bowing and uniforms and all that kind of stuff. Listen, don't be a traditionalist snob. MMA has a lot to offer, and I'm not suggesting you have to absorb it all into your traditional system. There's quite a bit to absorb from MMA. Now, what some people will think is, yeah, but it's so rough and tumble. And obviously that can be true. Again, so much has to do with what school you are at and training with certain people. But again, most professional MMA gyms, they spar and they wear pads, very similar to what you're seeing on screen, but they're not pounding each other. You go to these gyms, you won't find people beating the crap out of each other because it's a great way to get injured. Modern MMA is very scientific in the way they approach, the way they train, exercise, cardio, weightlifting, nutrition, and sparring 90% of the time is pitter-patter, fun, low impact. You're not trying to take each other's heads off. You're wearing gloves so you don't get cut. It's as simple as that. You're not going to get forms and kata training at an MMA gym. So if that's something you enjoy, I'm not saying that you can't do any of that. All I'm suggesting is that, yes, there's quite a bit to offer in MMA, and I'm not suggesting for a second that you give up traditional martial arts. Again, I come from a traditional background, and there's so much to offer. And like I said, there's more to self-defense than just the sparring and shadow boxing and working heavy bag and all that kind of stuff that you're going to get at an MMA gym. And you can still get that at a traditional martial arts school. And I'm not saying you have to give up your traditions and so forth. I'm saying absorb the useful from MMA training, recognize it for what it is, quality, intelligent, scientific approach to training, and absorb that and take it and use it in your traditional training. I don't care what system or style you train, karate, kung fu, Japanese jiu-jitsu, there's literally hundreds of different martial arts systems and styles. And you will see crossover even in the traditional systems. And I think of Kyokushin karate, for example, traditional karate style. But man, those guys now, that if you want to talk about being rough and tumble, those guys are way more rough and tumble than any MMA school I've ever trained at or any Muay Thai gym that I've ever cross-trained at. Those guys hit hard, hit often, and really into conditioning the body. You will get a little bit of that in MMA for sure. Just by hitting heavy bags, you're going to be conditioning your shins and your knuckles and so forth. But you're going to see that at a good gym, you're going to do it intelligently with hand wraps and gloves and shin pads and stuff like that. At the end of the day, what I'm saying is take the good that you can absorb from MMA. If you're looking for a martial arts school to train at for self-defense, MMA isn't going to be your 100% perfect answer. Not at all. It's going to be, something where if you train MMA, it's going to be very effective in a lot of situations. Listen, there's still weapons defense, although let me make it perfectly clear. If somebody's pulling a knife or a gun on you, you've probably put yourself in a bad situation. And I don't care if you're Bruce Lee, you don't want to be trying to go, weaponless against a weapon if you can avoid it. That's last ditch. You had no other choice. But that being said, you're not going to get like weapons defense, disarm training at your typical MMA school. They might have a self-defense Krav Maga program on the side. And that might be your answer. Maybe you find an MMA school with a program on the side, or you find a traditional martial arts school that has an MMA program on the side. At the end of the day, I'm saying you should do both. Traditional martial arts is a great answer for self-defense, but so is MMA. Don't count it out. Okay, everybody, please like, subscribe, and share, and everybody take care and stay safe.
So you okay? Can you go on? Get him a body bag! Yeah! All right.